I think there's a conversation to be had about the responsibility of the film, considering that this is a biopic. And I think the movie should have just chosen a narrative thread and stuck with it. This is yet another one where their roles are diminished, they fall into the background, they're just domestic figures. I don't know if somebody needs to maybe make a movie specifically, about the wives of these monarchs and their influence, but my channel, new and returning subscribers. If you're new, I hope I can persuade you to subscribe to my channel, and if you're a returning visitor and still not subscribed, hey, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Thank you. Today we're reviewing House of Ga'a, a 2024 period drama currently streaming on Netflix. This movie is written by Tunde Babalola and produced and directed by Bolanle Austin Peters. For a synopsis, it says, fearless warrior, powerful sorcerer, breaker of kings, witness the epic rise and fall of Bashorun Ga'a, one of the most ruthless leaders of all time. Bashorun Ga'a, first of all, is a biopic and specifically a period piece. So it's set in a period in the history of the Oyo Empire, when I believe it was at the height of its influence and political power. So this is the second movie about this powerful and fascinating historical figure. Let's get straight to, first of all, talking about the cast and performances. But before we go, have you liked this video? When you come to my channel and you start watching, just before I even ask you, just hit that button, okay? Help me with the algorithm gods. Thank you very much. So number one on this list is, of course, I guess you could say protagonist or the hero of this movie, or the figure that this movie is about. So Femi Branch, he plays Bashorun Ga'a, and he gives a really incredibly energetic and nuanced performance here. This is quite different from anything that I've seen him in, and his performance here is just really fantastic and it's brilliant. He completely immerses himself. You don't even see him. That's how much he immerses himself into this role. So he's as comfortable being violent as being egotistical, and just when he's expressing love for his sons, just all the facets of his personality, he's completely comfortable in all of these facets. And so you could say that his performance carries this movie much of the way. However, is his performance perfect? In my opinion, I say no, because he does straddle and step over that line into theatricality and a little bit of melodrama. Still is a really wonderful performance by Femi Branch there. Afolarin, he plays the character of Oyemekun, one of the sons, probably the younger son of Bashorun Ga'a. His performance here is good, if not particularly different than maybe other things I've seen him in, but that's a story thing, not him. I think he does as good as the story requires of him. So his role here is important, but that's not to say that he has a lot of screen time, which he doesn't. Also, I think his voice is the voice of the narrator. I hope I'm right about that. Next, we have Funke Akindele. She plays Ayiba. That's the senior wife, the oldest wife, senior wife of the Bashorun. She does adequately enough here. Again, nothing particularly exceptional. I think I've seen her in this role many times before. I don't want to keep repeating it. The only person here who plenty of nuance and just a difference from normal is required of them is Femi Branch. Every other person, we've probably seen them play a similar role. So her character here has no real nuance, to be honest. And I wish, you know what, I'm going to talk about that later, just a general comment on the queens in these epic movies. Ibrahim Chatta, he plays Sasa here. Sasa, that's the medicine man for Bashorun, and it's a really good, outstanding performance as well. His character is villainous. I mean, depending on how you look at it, you could say he's a diehard loyalist, or he's just not a very good person. However you frame it, I like the fact that he doesn't act villainous, if you know what I mean. Another person also that I could give a similar comment on, but much more complimentary actually, is De J Balls Oyegbile. He plays one of Bashorun's sons, and his performance really stands out in how absolutely credible and nuanced it is. The character is extremely vicious, but it just has this really great charisma. You want to watch this character even when he's doing terrible things. So I think Jide does a really great job there. Now I'm going to mention Lateef Adedimeji. All I'm going to say about him, I really like this actor. I think he's got so much potential. However, he keeps getting typecast in this slow-witted, simpleton, drunk, whatever. I keep seeing him having that vacant expression look on his face, just empty-headed, brain dead. I don't know why he keeps getting these roles. He was so amazing in Jagun Jagun, and please, more of that. I don't know, maybe I've just not watched enough of his things. You can direct me to, because he's pretty much, in The Grill, it was part of the story, so that's fine. But even just recently, the last movie I reviewed here, the one about football, Onyegu, and he was a drunk there and also had that vacant. It's always that mouth hanging. I'm tired of it. I don't want to see it anymore. I just don't want to see the same person having to play that same character over and over again. Moving on, here are other faces that I enjoyed seeing, even if they had minimal roles or appearances. I like to see Teddy A, mostly because he's the husband of our beautiful Bam Bam, and we love Bam Bam. Bam Bam is here as well. I like seeing William Benson, always, no cap. Bimbo Manuel, he's really great here as well. He has quite a few lines of dialogue, so he's not one of the people that just show up and disappear. There's quite a number of those. Yemi Black is really good here. We have Temi Lolu Foshudo. I think the last time we saw him was in A Green Fever. Alinu, who is here, Stanze, in and out. Then we have Femi Adebayo. We have Gbenga Titiloye, Kunle Koka, and finally Gabriel Afolarin. There are others. There's Tony Ibrahim. It's quite, as a general note, this is a really good cast. It's a superior cast, and it's also incredibly star-studded, and also these are just really good-looking people. I appreciate also that all these actors with their big names and big personalities, as far as this movie, they stay within the confines of their role. So I appreciate that. I should, however, say that just for me personally, my preference is to not see prominent actors in less than prominent roles. I don't enjoy that too much. It sets up a certain expectation that kind of falls flat for me when I see a name. It doesn't matter, but this is a good cast. Let's hang it there. Let's get straight to, guys, what works. Now, the intentionality of the production design is the first thing I'm going to talk about. From the scope of this movie, the locations, the sets, the costumes, not all, and I do have one aspect of costuming I'll point out later, but just in general, the costumes are really nice. The world building is good, the distinctions in the various districts that we visit, and then the costuming, of course, of various people by ranks and by status and all of that. It's really well done. And again, highlighting the costume, one of the things that stands out to me very quickly and early on is the brown tone of the costume. Is very much in keeping with just the earthy tones and mood of this movie. The color grading is also really consistent in tone. And then because we're talking technical aspects, I'm just going to say that I see that CGI. I think somebody from Ant Hill Studios came on set and was like, hey, let me show you. Okay, you know what, let me just say E for effort. Okay, they tried. I want to say they tried it, but let me just leave it at they tried. Let's remove the it. So I've already talked about the cast. It's a really good cast. One of the things I appreciate is that this movie has less of that theater feel that we have in many, if not most, of our epic movies. And so it's not perfect, but I think it's a leg above a lot of our epics in that particular way of it feels less like just stage drama. Then I like also the intentional framing in many scenes. There's just so many standout use of shadows and silhouettes. So I appreciate that a lot. There's some good subtle cultural grounding here, like some of the rules that guide the community, the rites, ceremonies, and beliefs. There's quite a good showcasing of those here as far as I can tell as an outsider. There's some good character development. I'm going to say specifically for the character of Oyeme-kun, the one played by Afolarin, not across the board, unfortunately, and definitely not for the main or the protagonist, and we'll get there. Some of the fights here are really well choreographed. Just some specific actions within fights that they're specifically chosen and framed and staged and all of that. So this again is not a general comment, it's for some aspects of the fight scenes are well choreographed. And then this is my final comment for what works in this movie, is that any addition to a cultural and historical archive is a laudable effort. So that's one more thing that I'm going to give this movie kudos for. And that brings us to the end of what works. I'm sure there are many more things that you can tease out, but for me that's it. Have you liked this video? And if you're not subscribed, are you subscribed? Have I convinced you to subscribe yet? If not, stay with me. Maybe in the next 10 minutes or so, I might. All right, guys, let's get to what does not work. Chaotic and rowdy fight scenes. I've already mentioned that some aspects are specifically staged, but in general, the fight scenes are very rowdy and chaotic. So I didn't really enjoy that, especially the one in the very beginning. I was ready to quit from that first fight scene, if I'm being honest with you. The CGI is not great. I've already said, like good effort. I respect the effort, but I don't like that if you know that your CGI cannot withstand scrutiny, why stay on it? Stay on that funny frog, stay on those fake boobs, stay on, there's so many just VFX and so on that just don't work. So I did say that while much of the costume worked, the one thing I didn't like was that body armor, breastplate, whatever that the warriors wore. In fact, when I saw it at the very beginning of the movie, I actually laughed out loud because I was like, this looks so costumey. So yeah, I really did not like that. Some shots are poorly framed. I've said that some were framed well, but just in general, I didn't have too many shots that I felt that were well framed. And then the cinematography is not really great in general for its contribution to storytelling. And then the editing as well. The editing specifically makes for just a disconcerting experience because the cuts, they make the scenes too quick to be able to read the subtitles. And for a language that, by the way, one of the positives is that this is in a local dialect, is in Yoruba language. However, the subtitles, the cuts are so quick in the editing that you're not really able to read those subtitles. So it just made for quite a disconcerting experience. I really don't like a lot of the animated text, especially when they go to a new location and then it just shows up there in that curly pink. I didn't enjoy that at all, because it's not cute, but it's just not in keeping with the general tone of this movie. Now let's get to the story, starting with the plot that I think just feels all over the place. First of all, Zainab's story is not necessary. It didn't really add anything and it wasn't particularly interesting. They just wanted to show us boobs, got it. Nor are Bashorun's actions in that particular storyline consistent. Just for that character that we know, if you were going to write that truthfully, there's no way that those events of that first night would even have happened that way. What does he need her heart for? What does he need her? This is a man that is fighting wars here, there, and if the idea is to say, oh, he's a great warrior but humbled by a woman's stare, I don't think that worked quite the way that it was intended. So I could have done without her. Bit of a time waster there. There's not much nuance to Bashorun, to the character of Bashorun Ga'a. There's no inkling really of what the villagers think of him. I know that historically we know that they love him, applaud him and all, but this movie does not really show us that and why would they love him. And I had a similar criticism with Anikulapo, by the way. It was difficult to tell what the villagers, it's like these stories play out on the upper deck. It doesn't really matter what is happening with the commoners and how all these events really impact on them and how they are reacting to these events. I really have no real sense of how he got and maintained his power. And please don't say by magic, because he definitely does not or would not have had a monopoly on magic in that time. So that's not clear. And that part is especially unfortunate because we know the legend, right? So when I come to a story like this that is about his life, I'm not expecting something that I could have read anywhere else. I'm really expecting to now see the intricacies of how these, whether it's by bargaining, whether it's by negotiation, whether it's by tricking people, whether it's by the ways that he schemes. And it's not just, don't tell me that he just needs to say a word and people just fall over themselves and obey, or because of his feats of arms. I don't believe it at all. The movie does not do a good job of showing us how, again, exactly he gets and maintains this power. There's a story arc, but without just much of a character arc. There's basically also no character development, and this is, in my opinion, because of where the movie picks as its starting point. It pretty much introduces us into the world when Bashorun is already, if not as powerful as he gets eventually, he's already taken probably the 10th step on that rung. So I don't get to see him from wherever he is to how he becomes this person. I don't know anything about his antecedents until when he's introduced to us. So there's just no character arc there and no character development. The character has no depth. He just feels rather one-dimensional, or I guess you could say two-dimensional, because he seems to have two sides. He's really good he's dealing with his children, and then he's bad and belligerent when he's dealing with everyone else. So I guess those are two sides, but just he doesn't feel like a well-rounded character to me. I think the movie should have just chosen a narrative thread and stuck with it. It tried to do too much and simultaneously ended up just not doing enough. So there's no real clarity also to the weight and far-reaching consequences of Bashorun's actions just on the wider political political landscape. It's implied, but I don't see it in this movie. I said I had a comment about the queens, and this is yet another epic where we know that as far as the history, queens have significant roles in the politics of the kingdom and all of that, but this is yet another one where their roles are diminished. They fall into the background. They're just domestic figures. And so I don't know if somebody needs to maybe make a movie specifically, about the wives of these monarchs and their influence. But so far in all these epics, they're all very swaggering male energy. We just are not seeing it. Some criticisms now that I've heard from the natives of the culture, this is me just being a mouthpiece because I can't really relate to this because I'm not of the culture. The first is the historical accuracy as far as the costume, and then the other is the creative license that the movie takes in the manner of Bashorun Ga'a's death. In the movie, he sets ablaze, but in real life, I understand. What do they say? How did they say he died in real life? See, I don't know. So it doesn't affect me, but I think there's a conversation to be had about the responsibility of the film, considering that this is a biopic, and in fiction, we're loser. But when it's something like this, it's a historical document or artifact, So do you want people now wondering, which is the truth? How did he really die? So like I said, I don't know the answer. I'll leave it to you, but there's a conversation to be had there. However, what is done is done. Now, just observing for me as someone outside of the culture, this just looks to me like another jagun, power-hungry person. I think that there's so much more to this legendary figure that this movie has not captured. And so that brings me to my conclusion, which is that this movie did not really hold my attention. It was difficult, and when I'm reviewing, I have to watch multiple times, so it did feel like a chore to me watching this. I had no real feelings or emotions or sentiments about anything, just things happening on screen that I didn't feel invested in any way, didn't really care about anything. And then there's just a general feeling for me when I see how alienated I feel from the account and the events and the narration of this movie. It just feels like it's probably esoteric. I guess that's the only way I can put it. Maybe it's not for me to understand, but I don't think that a biopic, if anything, is supposed to take the story from the natives of the culture to the wider audience and the world and so on, to spread the legend, so to speak. The title of this movie, that one's just pure marketing. It doesn't fit with the story or the tone of this movie. At 2 hours, I've already said this felt like a chore, so 2 hours is not especially long. See me watching TV on the other side. My TV is behind me and it looks like whatever is happening there looks interesting. I've never had my TV on while filming. I don't know how that happened. I was saying that at 2 hours long, it just feels longer than it really is. The narrative is not especially coherent. It's not engaging enough. And then the plot, I've already said, feels kind of all over the place. One failing of FRK, that's Fumilayo Ransom Kuti, which we reviewed here by this same filmmaker not very long ago, was too little of the personal life. And then the opposite is true here, with just too much of domestic life, but that isn't especially compelling. I really wanted to enjoy this movie more than I did, but in the end, I think I'm just going to resign myself to the fact that, again, it's not for me, and that is okay. So all of that said, this is an important piece of art. I stand on that. It's an important piece of art. Like I said already in the what works section, I'm for anything that adds to our cultural and historical artifacts. However, it does not fit, in my opinion, of a good film. It's still important as a historical document. And while I cannot promise you that it'll hold your interest, I do recommend this movie for the effort and the boldness of this endeavor. I recommend this movie also for maintaining a consistent tone, not with this plot, but with everything else, the world and so on, for feeling more grounded than many of the other epics that we have, and last but not least, for this really good cast. And so that's it, my friends, for House of Ga'a. Thank you so much. If you've been here till the end, I thank you especially. If you're not subscribed, just a reminder to please do that. Hit the notification bell so that you get notified when I post videos. Please don't forget to like these videos. I'd appreciate your comments in the comment section. I know that especially when it comes to historical movies like this, there's usually a bit of argument, and that's fine. Everybody's opinion is valid, so we always are respectful of each other. There's going to be a short version of this review linked below, so you can check that out as well and share. That's easier to share. It's usually under 5 minutes. What do I say to you, my friends? You have the right to an incredible viewing experience, so never settle. Thank you.